Lisa King is becoming a bit of a legend in the purpose-based entrepreneurship space with two high-profile ventures behind her. And she has some really interesting philosophies to share about success and about money.
You know, my personal thing is I just want to make the world a little bit better in any way that I can. And I think business is like such a powerful way to do that. Why do people need 3 houses? We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. Does one person really need all of this?
Working for a successful corporate meant unusually that her kids had to pay a bit of a price for this success.
I think I was the worst mum because it was like you work at a chocolate business and there's no chocolate coming home.
Then for Lisa, not being a morning person, eat my lunch involved quite a big sacrifice for her.
My friends thought it was hilarious. So I'd be up at 4 and then volunteers would come at about 6:30. And so every morning we had like 15 to 20 strangers turn up to the house.
And she discovered that purpose-based businesses often have different success markers.
You know, the success of the business is when we're actually going to close.
Right.
Because we won't be needed anymore.
And the problem with being high profile is that one day it may come to an end.
It felt like there was this big kind of like space where you weren't invited to things or you weren't part of those groups or that community anymore.
And every business person has their key moment of feeling like they are a success.
Honestly, my biggest thrill, like one of the highlights of, you know, the last 2 businesses they've had was
Lisa King, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Josh.
Great to have you here. So you've fed hungry kids and you've taken booze out of cocktails. Are you trying to make us better behaved as a species, or is this a personal mission that you're on?
No, I think, you know, what I've come to realize is that business is such a strong force and it can have such a huge impact. And you know, my personal thing is I just want to make the world a little bit better in any way that I can. And I think business is like such a powerful way to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Business can be a force for good or a force for indifference or perhaps negative as well.
Yeah.
And so there's been a lot of conversation about you as a person being a purpose-led entrepreneur. Was that something you were intentioned about before you started your first business, or did it become clear to you that that was one of the opportunities with the vehicle of business?
I think it's always been something personally, you know, that I was really or held close as a value. And I remember, you know, my first 15 years of working in a corporate life, like on the side, I would go and do charity work, and it was kind of trying to balance that very corporate commercial career with actually doing something good for others. And so I think it's always been a part of me, and it was just trying to find a way of bringing those things together. And, you know, I always felt like if money wasn't an issue, I would probably go and work for an NGO or a charity, and that kind of where my heart was.
Yeah. So have you sat down and done the work of Lisa King's personal purpose? Is that something that you've reflected deeply on, or is it manifested through your businesses?
I think like most entrepreneurs, you know, your values come through your businesses and who you are, and, you know, the way that you shape it is very much a representation of you. So I do definitely feel like, you know, both these businesses are representing what I feel is important in some ways. Doing the work, I think you kind of like learn as you go along and you figure it all out and why. You know, a lot of the times when you're running your business, you're kind of like just running and doing stuff. And it's hard to find that time to really kind of sit down and go, well, why am I doing this? You know, why is that important? Why am I getting out of bed at 4 every morning?
That's the grind, right?
Yeah. And what kind of keeps you going and what motivates you. But I think also, as you know, personally, having kids really makes you question that and think a lot about, you know, what you want to kind of leave them with and how you want to set that example for them.
Yeah. Mark Twain says that the 2 greatest days of a person's life are the day that they were born and then the day they figure out why, which is a quote I love to use and reflect upon a lot. And it's deep work, it's tricky work, but also it has a point in time, in my experience, having gone through the journey of endeavouring to establish why I'm here, because that's like, right at the core of our existence, right? And existentially, that can be quite a scary sort of thing. And so, doing good through business, elevating others, creating brands that people love, those are all things that I see from you from the outside. We've had a few interactions over time, but not deeply. To what extent have I kind of captured that?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
I think
cool.
that it is really interesting, when I talk to people, and even the way that I run my business is the way that I structure it. Like, money is not a driver. And, so even when, and I've had recent conversations with investors or potential investors and or advisors, and they're like, oh, you got to hold on to all the shares. Like, I kind of don't, and I'll say this, like, I kind of don't care about that in the end. Like, money is the means to make things happen and kind of achieve what I want to achieve, but it definitely isn't the end goal or the driver for me. And I think that's been really clear through all the decisions that I make and everything that I do.
It's profit, in my mind, needs to be a motive, but it can't be the motive. And the reason it's a motive is that we need it to stay in business, because if you don't make a profit, then you're going to go out of business pretty quickly, right? But if it's the sole motive, then we end up in the Enron or the FTX situation. And this is like a philosophical thing, and we're intending to get to this part of the conversation anyway. But my reflection over the time that I've been in business, which is running my own businesses for the best part of 30 years, is that I think that money has become too important to people. And I'm concerned that we've gone into the space of like greed. If I think particularly about the US and historically, the cultural representation of the United States was freedom. I think now it's greed. You spent quite a bit of time living and working there, and that's not a black or a white thing, but a kind of a grey continuum-y thing. What's your reflection on the statement I've just made?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I just moved to the US like 5 months ago to Miami, and just the money is mind-blowing. Like, I actually can't get over it. And from where we live, we can see the river. And every morning there's lines of these amazing boats and yachts that just come down the river, and you look at like the money that's there. People do cruises, tours around the islands to look at celebrity homes. And, I think Elon Musk has just moved there, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, like anyone who's got money has these incredible houses there. And, for a lot of people, you kind of look at it and you're like, oh my God, wow, that's amazing. For me, it makes me feel really uncomfortable because I'm like, why do people need 3 houses and spend, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. And when there's so much need elsewhere, and it's like, does one person really need all of this?
No, they don't.
No.
The notion of a billionaire is a relatively modern invention. And so, Warren Buffett would, if he was in the room with us, that would be wonderful. But he would probably agree with the notion of, there's this excess and consumption and look at me that's kind of taken over a lot of the world, and particularly the United States. And people have become aggrandized because of their achievement of these things, and the achievement in and of itself is really cool, but the money aspect is the bit that's just become a little bit kind of gross and a bit icky, I think. So
and I'm finding that in New Zealand too. I kind of see New Zealanders really look up to people who are rich, and I mean, you see that in the US. People get elected to powerful positions just because they have money, and I'm kind of starting to see that a lot more when I come home. It's that, oh, they're rich, so they must know what they're talking about. That's a funny link to me.
I agree. It's that halo effect thing. If they've made money, then they must know a lot about a lot of things.
Yes.
Or if they're a great plastic surgeon, they must know about investing in stocks, kind of thing. Those two things just don't go hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
In many, many instances. But we're here to tell a story.
Mm.
And so Eat My Lunch is really the start of Lisa's entrepreneurial journey as far as I know it. Was that your first foray into owning and running your own business? Yeah,
Yeah, it
great.
was. I had this like corporate career, worked for huge companies around the world. And then back in New Zealand, I was working for Fonterra. So, yeah, that was kind of the point where I decided to leave that corporate life
Yes,
and start my first business, which was Eat My Lunch. Yeah,
yes.
so that was it was nice in the fact when I look back, like, when you don't know, you don't know.
Mm.
And
Naivety is helpful with your first venture.
yeah, it is. I think it is really helpful because otherwise you probably would never do
No.
it. And so that was kind of like just jumping in totally blind and running, first of all, my first business, but one in fresh food making, like,
Every day.
every day, knew nothing about it. And then logistics, it was a huge logistics business because we were delivering lunches all around Auckland every single day. So, yeah, just kind of really knew nothing at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd come from a background of the Fonterra, the corporate marketing, consumer products, or food actually, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And so a bit of me wondered, there was ice cream, there was processed cheese, chocolate. Were you starting a healthy food business as a bit of atonement?
It was actually. I remember working at Cadbury and most people were like, oh, that's amazing. You get free chocolate,
yeah.
all the time. And, I'd done chips before then and then I had kids and it was like I wouldn't let them eat any of the stuff
But
I
mum.
was marketing. Yeah, I think I was the worst mum because it was like you work at a chocolate business and there's no chocolate coming home. And so it did make me question. It was like I felt so hypocritical about, well, I'm happy marketing it to the rest of the public and having them eat, tons of sugar and salt and all these things I know that aren't good, things I wouldn't even feed my own kids.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of definitely, what started making me think I kind of need to get out of this.
Yes.
And do something that I'm actually going to be proud of.
Yeah, I get it. I grew up in Papakura, and there's a Cadbury factory in Papakura,
Oh,
there
yeah.
was then
Yeah.
many years ago, and the popular kids at school were the ones whose parents worked in the factory because they'd get the broken biscuits in bags, and you go around to their houses and there'd be chocolate biscuits everywhere. And back in those days, certainly my mum was very, very health conscious, and so we had Vogel's bread and chalk biscuits, milk biscuits.
Oh, yes.
They were our treat.
Yeah.
People called us freaks and weirdos because everyone else was eating the chocolate biscuits and the chippies and that sort of stuff. But I was at the time resentful but very grateful in hindsight. But going back to Eat My Lunch, so did you spot a gap in the market, or was it that you were kind of going, this is a need that I could fill and this is aligned with my purpose? Was that kind of the orientation of the original?
Kind of how it all started was, I don't know if you remember a long time ago, so it's probably like 2014, Campbell Live did a piece on school lunches.
Oh, yes. Okay, I heard about it. It went kind of viral, didn't it?
Yeah, it did, and everyone was talking about it, and I remembered watching it on the news, and I think I was just as shocked as everyone else.
Hey, it's Josh. Thanks for listening to the show. When founders talk about the dream exit, they're really talking about freedom. Freedom to choose how to use their time and to decide what comes next. I'm a client of JB Ware in New Zealand, and I know this is what sets them apart. They help entrepreneurs and leaders turn success into significance. A great exit isn't just about the commas in your bank account. It's about what those commas enable you to create. Two Commas is proudly partnered with JB Ware, helping founders by putting their wealth to work for generations.
Going, how the hell do we have this problem in New Zealand where kids are not eating? Like, that's crazy. And it just goes against, everything you think about New Zealand, of this country of abundance and amazing food. And so that really just struck a chord with me. And it was one of those things I just could not get it out of my head. And I kept rewatching that piece. And I just was like, I want to do something. I need to do something about this. But what do you do as this, single person to kind of try and even contribute to such a massive social problem? And that's kind of how it all started. It just like sat in my head, for a few months, and then and then I just remember having a conversation with a friend one night going, oh, it's really, I can't believe this thing's happening in New Zealand. And then I just started talking about, like, if we were to do something, what could that look like? And I was wearing a pair of Tom's shoes at the time. And, Tom's it was a shoe company that started some time ago, and it was based on a buy one, give one model. And then I was like, oh, wouldn't it be fun? Like, wouldn't it be cool if we actually took that model and applied it to lunches? And this is, pre-Uber Eats. I remember I was working at Fonterra at the time. If I missed out on lunch, there wasn't a lot around to get. And, I was always thinking, oh, it would be great to have lunch delivered and maybe something healthy. So those kind of like just connecting, these different dots as well. And, my food bag had launched in the market, and they had kind of come with this, subscription model and making things really easy for people. And so, I think it was just a connection of all of those different dots that led me to the idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you decide to MVP it and start very small with, one corporate and then kind of, going out to the schools to see if they'd want the plus one kind of thing? Or did you go all in? Did you bet the farm and leave the job and kind of jump straight in and see what happened?
We started working on, I think I came up with the idea maybe in October 2014. It was Labour weekend. I remember being on Waiheke and talking about it. And the next morning I registered the company, and then started working through it. And it was so unknown. Like, it was hard to find reference models, or, when people were like, what do you expect to do? I'm like, I have no idea. Like, no one's kind of done this kind of thing before. Where do we even start? How do we talk to the schools? So, we definitely thought, okay, let's just test it out. One school. We picked one school in Mangere, went and spoke to the principal, and, I was able to use some of my corporate contacts from my previous life and went and talked to them and kind of go, would you guys be interested in this kind of thing? And then I got Michael Meredith, the chef, to come on board. And, so in the weekends while working my corporate job, we were testing recipes and things like that. And then I think it just got to a point where I was thinking, actually, I need to go all in on this, and because I would regret it if I didn't give it 100% to see if it would work or not. And so a couple of months before we launched, I left my corporate job. And we launched like in June 2015. So it wasn't very long. It was like 7 months of kind of planning and getting things together. So it was intended that it was like one school, 50 lunches a day. So I knew I had to go and sell 50 lunches to corporates. Right. And we were like, using networks and things to get that word of mouth and people buying into it. And from a forecast point of view, I was like, I have no idea. Like, maybe it would be really nice if we could give 10,000 lunches in our first year. Like, that sounded like a huge number back then.
Yeah.
And then basically it just went crazy, and we had to quickly find other schools. We had to go and hire more people, and we were doing this from my home as well. So, there was a limit to what we could do too. Go every single day, we're out buying more trestle tables and knives and chopping boards and fridges and, all of it. It just grew so fast. And by kind of like week 12, we were doing about 2,000 lunches a day.
A day? Wow.
And obviously
that's 10,000 in a week.
Yeah. And so suddenly that number was like, oh my God, and I think by week, I remember like posting a milestone that we had done, maybe 10,000 by week 8.
Yeah, wow.
We'd given 10,000 lunches. Yeah.
So it kind of essentially did the going viral thing by the sounds. Is that right?
Yeah.
Was it accidental or by design?
We had no money, so definitely. I just remember seeing all these comments on, on social, on a social feed. Someone had posted about it, And it just kept coming and coming. And the PR, the media were really interested. It was such a novel concept. People hadn't, at that point, no one had even heard of the word social enterprise.
Yeah.
Like, no one knew what it was. And but they loved the fact that, we were feeding hungry kids, that Michael was involved, and, you could get this cute little lunch delivered to you. So, yeah, it definitely took off in a way that we hadn't expected. And that wasn't really by design, because we weren't really putting much out there, apart from going around to a few corporates and doing little talks about it.
Yeah. And so early days, you've talked about logistics as being a big problem. What were some of the other unanticipated large challenges that you had to come across, overcome in that first kind of 6 to 12 months as you were going through really rapid expansion and growth?
Yeah, it was just people,
Yeah.
and getting hands literally to make these 2,000 lunches and deliver them. We were using a courier company. They couldn't really keep up. And the window to deliver a lunch, like you have to deliver lunch before lunch time.
Yeah.
And I just, it was, I remember one of the kind of horrible moments where I had to make a call to a customer because we hadn't delivered his lunch and it was 3:00.
Oh.
And you were just like, I'm so sorry. So, those are definitely some of those growing pains. And as I said, logistically, it was quite a challenging business because it was fresh food every day. And so, trying to find suppliers who could give us, 2,000 bread rolls a day and deliver that to us at the price that we needed it, that was really challenging. And because it was such short time frame, you didn't have time to fix things. So if only, 1,950 bread rolls turned up, we were out most mornings going to the supermarket, buying things that we were missing, or, you just kind of had to make up a lot of things on the spot. And so, it was a very intense business because of that fresh food and the logistics and the delivery of that. So, finding kind of manpower to make that. And we had this idea that, there was kind of two parts of the business. The one was like the more commercial part that we were selling lunches to corporates. And then the other one was obviously the free lunches to kids. And that was the charitable social side of the business. And we thought, what if we could get people to volunteer to make the free lunches? Because it's such a huge cost. And we were like, well, how do we do that? Like, so I think we posted something.
Just tweeted it.
Yeah. And then suddenly we had like waiting lists of people wanting to come and help. And so every morning at about 6:00, so I would be up at 4. And I was just saying before, I'm not a morning person whatsoever. So this was incredibly challenging personally.
Wow.
My friends thought it was hilarious. So I'd be up at 4, and then volunteers would come at about 6:30. And so every morning we had like 15 to 20 strangers turn up to the house.
Yeah, wow. They're still at home at this stage.
Yeah, and
wow.
we were home for like the first 8 months. So yeah, you kind of never really knew who was going to wander into your home.
Yeah.
And because we were so busy in the middle of making lunches, I'd just leave the door open. And whoever was supposed to turn up would just turn up.
Did you ever get any random strangers walking past going, what's going on in that house? Let's go and check it out. A dog walks in.
Possibly. I wouldn't know because
Right, too
people
busy.
were just like coming in.
Yeah.
And my kids were still sleeping, in their rooms at this time. So, so there was a lot of trust out there of letting, complete strangers come into your home every day, seeing the operations of it, being that exposed as a business because we were still learning. And, there's a lot of health and safety regulations around making fresh food, as you can imagine. So that was really interesting. And then I remembered, then we got a notice from the Auckland City Council that our neighbours had complained about all these cars turning up and parking across their driveways because it was all the volunteers. We were in a residential area. So that was at that point where we were like, oh, we need to actually move. Yeah. But I actually really loved it, having the business at home.
Yes.
And well, it was easy to get out of bed then at 4.
Right, of course, you're
So
walking
you
straight to the
just-
kitchen. Yeah.
But also the kids, they were quite young, like they were 6 and 8 at the time.
Mm.
And they would come home, or, they would get up and like the house was like full on going at the time with probably about, 25, 30 people in the house. And they were kind of just like a part of it. And they'd just, walk around, all these volunteers and staff making their breakfast, making their own lunches.
Making themselves at home in
yeah,
your home.
yeah.
Are you a highly social person as well? Do you like entertaining at home?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Otherwise
Yeah.
that would have been like, I'm not a morning person. There's strangers in my house. I'm an introvert. This is freaking me out on every level. So
No, definitely.
Okay, tick that box.
Like having people over. There wasn't a lot of socializing at the time.
No doubt.
And and then they'd come home from school and they'd help me in the evenings do the prep for the next day.
Yeah, wow.
Whether it was like stamping bags or,
Yes.
cutting up stuff. And so they were like really involved in their way. And I kind of really liked that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a cool
So, we definitely tried to make things really simple for
Yeah.
everyone. And it definitely got to a point like we actually had someone who looked after the volunteers. So there was a briefing in the morning. We set them, really clear tasks. And so like because of the volume that we were making, everyone just had one job.
Yes.
So in the kind of 3 hours, you got really good at
Slicing tomatoes.
slicing
Yep.
or buttering or, and
Yep.
so it was a production line,
Yeah, great.
literally.
Yep. Henry Ford. Thank you. Mhm.
So we kind of got that process going.
Yeah.
And I really loved it because I think, people really do want to help, but it's hard to figure out how to and do it in a meaningful way. And the fact that, we had waiting lists like of 3 to 4 months of people,
Wow.
of volunteers signed up. So that, we felt so lucky because I knew there were other charitable organizations that kind of struggled to get people to help. And it was fun to see like people from all parts of the community. So whether it was CEOs and, corporate teams too, like one morning I turned up and it was the whole place was just covered in policemen in uniforms, buttering bread with aprons on, or school kids. So it was such a mix of people and that was really nice because I think once you kind of put on that apron, everyone was the same
Yeah, great.
and they were there for the same reason. And so, it wasn't like anyone was like the chief sandwich butterer, like it just like everyone was the same and they were learning from the same place. And we had people that would come like every week, like this group of older ladies.
Grannies.
Yeah, they were kind of in their 60s and they met doing the volunteering at Eat My Lunch and then they just decided they would come every Tuesday.
Oh, cool.
And then after that, they'd go off and have coffee and breakfast together. So it became quite a social thing. And, we'd always had the music pumping and, and then Michael would walk in and they loved talking to Michael. And and I think, when you see all these lunches piled up at the end of it, like that sense of satisfaction and that you've actually achieved something and that day a kid is going to have that and they're going to be fed because of what you did. I think that was so powerful. And that wasn't by design either. Like we didn't realize just the impact that would have on people. Yeah.
Yeah, good on you. What was the scale that you were at when you moved out of the home, around about 8 months in? So how many sandwiches, et cetera, were you making on a daily basis? And where did you go? Like what was the next step for the business?
Yeah, we were, so in total we were doing about 2,000, so 1,000 for the kids and 1,000 for the corporates.
Yeah.
And we actually had to go to like a bespoke place and fit it out with a kitchen because of the size of it and just we knew the amount of like tables that we needed because it was between a production factory and a kitchen. Yeah, really. So we went up to Galatos Street.
Oh yeah,
just off K Road.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. and fitted that space out. And it was perfect. And it was great because we also, we needed volunteers, so we didn't want to be too far out.
Right. There's a bus route right there.
Yeah, or people, were working in the city, so
Yep.
they could come and do that in the morning and then go. And so, there were a lot of considerations around that. And we had so much help from others, like I think, in the same way Sarah does with her Kindness Collective. Just so many corporates wanted to get involved as well. And, we had like a coffee company from Wellington. They put in a coffee machine and they would come and make coffees for all the volunteers every morning. And,
Cool.
Mini gave us like a fleet of minis to do all of our deliveries. It was just something you don't see when you work in the corporate world. When it's corporate, it's like, what's in it for me? And it was always like win-win. Because even though we were a for-profit business, because of that social side, like just the amount of support that we got with no returns on that, that was quite eye-opening too.
Yeah.
Just kind of, it was a new way of doing business.
Mm-hmm. How did the economics of it work?
It was tough.
Right.
Giving away free lunch, and that's why having the volunteers making that was really important. And we definitely got to scale. So we were doing probably at the peak about 2,400 for the kids. So then another kind of...
So nearly 5,000 lunches a
Yeah.
day. That's so much food.
Yeah. Just kind of constantly refining those processes. And, fresh food is tough. And you have to keep it chilled. There's a lot of health and safety regulations around that.
Yeah. And so you got to 5,000 lunches a day, and I think it was around about COVID time that you had to kind of adjust what you were doing with the business. Have I got that timing about right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually it was just, it was around COVID time. We, like every other business, it was like, what do we do? Because all our revenue was coming from corporates.
And nobody was going to work.
No one was going to work. And also the schools were closed a lot of that time. And we're like, well, kids are still going to go hungry. So we switched to like delivering boxes of ingredients, so like vegetables, bread, milk, and everyone was like wanting deliveries at that time. And then that gave a box to kids where we filled it up with ingredients for enough lunches for the whole week. And we delivered those to kids' homes during COVID. So that was a very different logistical system because instead of going to, 60 schools, we were going to 2,000 homes. So,
that's
again,
like 30 times the number of places that you've got to get to for a delivery.
Wow, so trying
nuts.
to figure that out during COVID. And then again, like staffing, like how do you get people during COVID, the distancing rules I remember we had to work through at the time. But, again, like those decisions that we made, we could have shut at the time, but it was like, no, we still got to get food out to the kids. So how do we make that happen? And actually it was fun. Like, while most people were stuck at home, we were in the kitchen, packing these boxes and things. And then kind of like coming out of COVID, the government announced their school lunches program.
That's right.
And, I think for us, I remembered when we started Eat My Lunch, we were like, the success of the business is when we're actually going to close.
Right.
Because we won't be needed anymore. And that was quite a funny thing. And I didn't say that out loud to many people because...
No, that's not a vision that people want to chase, right? At some stage you'll be out of a job because we have to shut the doors.
Or, our bank or anything like that. But that really was the measure of success for me, that the service wouldn't be needed, that there wouldn't be kids to feed. And so we kind of would have to close.
Right.
And the fact that the government picked up the program and, again with volunteers, we had every politician in there making lunches, as you can imagine, and, other well-known people doing their bit. And so I like to think, we definitely had an impact around their decision to kind of go into this program. And we worked a lot with them, just sharing our learnings. We'd been doing it for 5 years. And that was challenging because I think, they obviously had a very different agenda. There were things like, hot lunches, which we were definitely recommending against.
Even another challenge to overcome, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then you've got a different bacterial management issue, I understand.
Can you imagine hot cooked chicken being delivered?
What a nightmare.
To schools.
Yeah.
So, and even the nutritional elements, our lunches were healthy. Like, we didn't just give, kids crap food. So that it was always like a sandwich with a protein and some vegetables, and then a snack and a piece of fruit, like what most kids were having for lunch.
Yeah.
And they came in with these nutritional guidelines that were very idealistic.
Right.
And it was like, oh, no, you can make more than 3 times a week sandwiches, anything involving bread. I was like, well, why? Most kids eat bread every day.
Yeah. It's a staple.
Yeah. And, it had to be like really healthy and have like 2 servings of vegetables. And, they'd come back with menu suggestions like, oh, how about a quinoa salad? And
how many kids are going to eat that?
You're like, these kids are not eating anything. They're not going to move from that to then this weird salad.
Trendy Ponsonby lunch.
Yeah, right, that my kids wouldn't even eat.
Yeah.
So that was quite challenging because I think they definitely had an agenda to fulfill and, it was very idealistic and it was also politicized versus actually just being really practical and kind of going like, what is required? And we had also worked with, a lot of the schools and, had done a lot of research and data collection, listening to them about what was required. And we only gave them enough lunches for the kids that needed it. It wasn't everyone at the school.
Yeah.
So that was something we also advised against. But, they were like, oh, we don't want anyone to feel like they're missing out. We're like, they don't because, we put it in a plain brown bag. It doesn't look like it's anything else. It's something they could have bought from home. So, there were already a lot of those learnings. And I think it was disappointing that they kind of didn't take a lot of that on board. We were involved with that program for the pilot year. And then got selected to do it again in the first kind of full year. And it just got to a point where actually commercially it couldn't make sense because suddenly they were like, oh, well, schools want more hot meals. And so now you've got to make 3 hot meals a week, even in summer. And we're like, this is impossible. And our kitchen was never set up to deliver that. So that's when we kind of thought, actually, you know what, the government's already doing it. We were feeding about 2,500 kids a day. They're doing 125,000 kids a day. That's amazing. It's time for us to kind of just step out. Yeah.
It's in reflection, you're telling the story in hindsight, but this was your baby that you'd kind of conceived of the idea and over Waiheke built everything from the ground up. It lived in your home. Most of us with our first venture, our identity's tied up in that first business especially. What was that like for you to have to go, okay, we've done our time, it's time to kind of shut the doors for the business? That
was really hard. Yeah. And you're right, and it is that identity piece, and it's like, well, what now? And, it was hard letting go at that point. But it also felt like the right thing to do. And I've always kind of probably taken more of a stance of whatever's best for the business versus what I want and what's best for me. So definitely at that point, I was like, I think this is what is best. But yeah, you do go through this almost like grieving stage and like a bit of like, oh, what does this all mean now? And, if I'm not eat my lunch, then
who am I?
Who am I? And who is Lisa King? And, and I definitely felt, when Eat My Lunch was at its peak, everyone wants to talk to you and everyone wants you to do this and be part of something. And after that, it felt like there was this big kind of like space where you weren't invited to things or you weren't part of those groups or that community anymore.
like a
Mm.
void opens up. I talk about it as being the business is gone, which is a part of our identity, but the ecosystem that sits around that, the place that you go to work, the place that you have your coffee in the morning has gone. The representation that you have in a community or in the world is gone. The Eat My Lunch social, good, purpose-based business is no longer there, and so therefore people don't seek Lisa King out as a consequence of that not being there anymore. And it's really quite difficult for a lot of people to kind of work through that space. I want to get to that, but there's a
Mm.
key piece of the Eat My Lunch story that that I'd like to kind of explore with you. Doing great work, delivering 2,500, give or take, lunches to kids in need every single day. You had police people, politicians, business leaders, everyone coming through the doors to help out and get
Mm.
in behind this. But the press wasn't always kind to you.
No, and I think that was a really hard period
Mm,
and a hard lesson to learn
mm.
because, we were getting all these accolades and all this recognition and everyone loved it. And, so many like people would come up to me and it's just like, I love Eat My Lunch, I got it the other day. And it just made you feel so good. And, and it was the reason that, I was getting up at
4 o'clock in the
4
morning.
o'clock in the morning. Yeah, and then one day, naively, someone from the media called and said, "Oh, we've just been notified that you're not giving the lunches that you say you are." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And I didn't realize, like, the minute you open your mouth, everything is recorded. So that was a big lesson for me because I'd always just been so open and with, everyone and the media and inviting people into our business. So, and then a story kind of blew up that said that, I personally was profiting off the business and that, I lived in a house in Grey Lynn and,
Oh, how dare you?
how dare I am making all this money from, from hungry kids. And so it was such a twist in the story. And yeah, I was quite devastated by that because, you're kind of putting in all these hours and sweat and tears and think you're doing all this good and then realizing actually not everyone wants you to do that or is supportive of you doing that. And I think probably it is that first-hand experience of, New Zealand tall poppy syndrome in a little way. And also just for myself, just kicking myself for being so naive about that. And we had to, at the time we had foodstuffs that had invested in the business. And so that kind of gave them another angle of this was just this, profit-driven thing that was taking advantage of this situation of kids going hungry at school. And so, we had to come up with a kind of counter PR strategy. But by that point, no one reads the second follow-up story.
No. And if there's ever a retraction or an apology from a newspaper, it's buried rather than at the front. But you're totally right. They see the first instance of the thing, and they're vilifying someone, not the follow-on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To the point I even had to show this reporter, like, what I was being paid.
Oh, wow. That's
And
gross.
I just thought, why do I even have to justify this? And
Yeah.
I was being paid way less than I've ever been paid in my life. And as a business owner, when times are tough, you're the first one to not get your pay and, to put up your own money for expenses and things like that. And, so that was, it was a bit of a, little stab in the gut, that period. And also, I think, particularly in the charity space in New Zealand. So New Zealand has one of the highest ratios of charities per capita. And, we tried to collaborate and work with some charities that were working in the same space. And what I realized is they're very territorial.
Yeah.
And, you've only got this small bit of funding. Everyone's going for that piece of funding. And so anything you might want to do that can take away their funding, it becomes quite competitive. And I hadn't actually realized how that charity space worked. So that was another bit of an eye-opener. But it definitely made me more cautious when talking to media and inviting PR into like the business and personal life as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So per capita wise, we've got the most charities in the world, and it speaks to Kiwis' desire to help, but also our shortcoming around collaborating. Sometimes we're not that great at doing it, which is ironic given that, our forebears came to this country and had to collaborate to work together to kind of, forge whatever the country is into what it is today. And so we think, there's a need over there. So rather than going and finding the charity that's already meeting that need,
We just set up.
yeah, there's 9 breast cancer charities.
Yeah,
Amazing work. There should be one.
Yeah.
Get together and then, lobby government, fund research, distribute money properly, one back office, all the things that we know about, right?
Yeah.
And so it sounds like you kind of had that experience of being other charity heads, who, by the way, are all paid because you should be, right?
Absolutely.
You've got to eat.
Yeah.
You've got to put food on the table. And so there's this misnomer, and I remember talking to other charity owners. I set up a charity, a startup charity, which naively waded into the space of doing funding like a payroll giving space.
Oh, yeah.
And essentially it was another startup, and got together a team and put together a value proposition, and then we launched, and it was immediately the Great Recession of 2024 kicked in, got some trial customers, and everyone loved the idea, but it was a matching, not dissimilar. It was like a dollar for dollar or 50 cents for a dollar matching on behalf of your employees. But because of the circular nature of how the charitable rebate works, essentially ended up being that the company would have only had to put in like 30 cents or 20 cents for the dollar to be able to get the dollar matching. Really nice idea. But in reality, people were tapped out at that stage and, economic environment, etc. And so we ran it for a couple of years, but then sunset it. And so I've got a little bit of exposure to that. And I met with a bunch of charity heads over time. And there's this weird perception of people that exist in the charitable sector that if someone's giving $1 to a charity, they think that entire dollar should go to the cause. And I'm like, well, hold on, there's an operation. There's an office, there's people, those people have to eat, just like you have to eat. Like it's the same thing. They have to live in a house too. It's exactly the same. Yeah. Some people might be in the situation that they don't need to have an income from it. They might be later in their life where they might have a wealthy partner, but that's not the average everyday person. And so, then there's these cases of charities that end up being ineffective. The operations consume 80% of the money that comes through the door. The gold standard is about 50%. So if you can distribute half of the money that you take through the door to the causes, then you're doing a really, really good job. And if you compare that to business, that means that you're actually generating 50% net margin on every dollar that comes through the door, which is so efficient. Yeah. It's such an incredible business, right? Business, if you can get it at about 10%, you're running a great business.
Yeah.
So all these things you don't know from the outside. If there was something that you could tell people about the charitable space and business for good, like purpose-led businesses that they wouldn't know, what would that be?
Yeah, I think, definitely the mindset and the understanding has changed across this time. Because when we first started, it very much was like, oh, you're feeding hungry kids. Oh, so you're a charity. No, we're a business. What do you mean you make money? And so it was like, in people's head, those two things were totally separate and they couldn't exist together in one structure. And even now, trying to it was one of our big challenges, always trying to figure out the structure, because we were being taxed like a normal business, yet we were doing so much. We were doing so much good. And so it was always like, how can we structure this? But there was just nothing, no provision for that in the New Zealand tax system. We even had the IRD come and spend a week with us because they couldn't understand our business model. And so, there was a lot of education kind of pioneering this type of business model. And so for me, one of the key things that we really wanted to kind of get people to get their heads around was that they can coexist, and it should. And that if you can, have a business model, but, there's such a social core at the heart of it, not we're making millions of dollars and we're going to give away, 100,000 to this charity.
Which is how business normally tends to think and work, right?
Yeah. And, still we're not seeing a lot of that in New Zealand. but, you're seeing it flourish in lots of other countries where there is an entire system built around these types of businesses. They've got different tax structures, different legal requirements. Because one of the reasons we didn't want to be a charity was just the legal requirements and the reporting and I was like, oh my God, that would just kill me if that was what I spent most of my time doing. So, yeah, I think just trying to think a little bit more outside the box and, I really want people to go, these two things can coexist, and they should.
Yes.
Actually. I think, and I would really love to see more of that, particularly in New Zealand.
Yeah. Coming back to the start of our conversation, greed has become a bit of a thing in the world, and this is an encouragement to get away from that greed thing and to think about how you could, with your success in your business, that there's a responsibility, I believe, that comes with that for people to be able to share back through. And, we're all pretty conscious and aware that the divide between the haves and the have-nots has only gotten worse. In my lifetime, it's gotten quite chronically worse. Remember the 1980s, everyone was broke. It was just how broke you were. And now there's been all this wealth that's been invented and created in the last 20 years, and it's been concentrated to a very small group of people. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's what you do with that wealth that is, the thing that drives it. And if you're buying another $100 million boat when you've already got one, when you kind of go, is that right? Is that necessarily right? I'm not sure. I'll wander away from that judgment piece. So we'll come back to Lisa was sitting at home, Eat My Lunch was no longer. When did AF Drinks come into your mind? When did you start kind of thinking, I'm going to get into another business, and Sticker still around in the food and beverage space?
Yeah. So look, fortunately, I think, in business, timing is
everything.
Such a huge part of it. And so actually just before COVID, I had decided to stop drinking, and I had some really amazing friends, female friends, some that, we know mutually, and, successful female entrepreneurs and so forth. And a few of them had given up drinking for like 6 months. And they were telling me about how amazing it was. And, that they were sleeping better and they were way more productive and all of this. And then at the same time, I actually started getting really, really bad vertigo. And I don't know if you know what that is like.
My mum has it, so yeah.
Oh, yeah. And it's quite debilitating,
Yeah.
A serious version of that. And I just thought, oh, God, it feels like every time I drink, I get vertigo. And so I thought, I want to just see if I cut that out of my life, if that would help. And all of my friends, the couple of friends who were trying not drinking, they were saying how great it was. And I kind of wanted to test that for myself. And so this was literally just before COVID. And I was thinking, there's just nothing good to drink when you're not drinking alcohol.
Fizzy water. Great.
Yeah,
How
or
exciting.
Coke or juice or, and you're just like, I don't want any of that sugary crap. And what I really wanted was a gin and tonic. But just without the alcohol. Yeah. And so I just started researching that, and I was actually really shocked at how I had no idea just how bad alcohol was for us. And I don't know if people,
poison.
It is. And
tell us some of the things, rather than if people don't know about this, if they haven't done the research. Tell us a bit more about that.
So alcohol is linked to about 200 diseases. I think something like 4 people die every minute globally from an alcohol-related issue. It is a carcinogen. It's been rated by the medical community as the most dangerous drug, above.
Wow.
And because of the social impact that it has, because it's not just on you, for everyone else.
Right.
So I was actually really shocked. I compare it to, say, tobacco. There was the ban of tobacco sponsorship, advertising, now they've gotten more strict with hiding and so forth. And I'm like, how is it that alcohol's got away with this? And it's sponsoring festivals and huge signs at sporting events. And it's right there the minute you walk into a supermarket. A third of it is alcohol in your face.
Actually, you're right, isn't it? It's one of the first things you come across. Fruit and veg, high margin, we all know that.
Yeah, and then alcohol.
Right.
And your kids are seeing it every day, So I just thought it was so fascinating that we don't question that.
Mm.
Yet, we've gone quite extreme with smoking.
Yeah. And drugs are illegal.
And drugs are illegal. And so it's like, this is crazy.
What do you put that down to, by the way? Is it
Without,
lobbying?
yeah, without getting into too much of that. But also I think we accept it so much as it's such a core. If you think about every time you go out, or there's a celebration or dinner or whatever.
Go to a friend's house. It's a drink. Let's have a drink.
It's having, yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm.
And so I think we're just so used to it as being part of our lives, and that we can't really socialize without it, or go anywhere, or, do anything that's fun without it, or watch a sports game without drinking. If you think about all the occasions, it's just present constantly.
It's both the mental model, like the association piece, that we do all of these things and then we have a drink to accompany those things on the one hand, but on the other hand, because I've been through a number of phases of my life where I haven't drunk for a period of time. I haven't done the I'm not drinking for good now thing, toyed with it, but I haven't done that. But I've done 6, 8, 10 weeks, at various stages. And at the outset, personally, I actually felt social discomfort, and I'm not a social discomfort guy. I'm very confident and gregarious in a social setting typically, and I had to get accustomed to doing that stuff without a drink and without that one or two, Dutch courage is the term that we tend to use for it, kind of social things. And I still haven't found a solution to that, by the way, probably other than, you do less of the partying. You certainly get to that 11 o'clock at night and you're at a party and you're like, I've had this conversation with you 3 hours ago and I'm just out of here. Like, I'm just going to go home because this is dull. You're a bit boring. Am I like that? All these things go through your head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for women, it's like, I remembered like when I stopped and we went out to dinner and I was like, I'm not going to have wine. And people were like, what's wrong?
Yeah. Are you pregnant? Are
you pregnant? Like, are you not feeling well? And then you cut it. And then when you're not drinking, it also makes other people feel uncomfortable.
It does. Yeah.
And they're like, go on, just have one.
Yeah.
It'll
be fine.
Yeah. And it's like, God, you're encouraging me to put, something bad into my body.
Yeah.
And rather that, if you went out and you told your friends you'd given up smoking, no one would question it. Right. They're not going to go, oh, go on, have a smoke.
Yes.
Because everyone knows how bad it is for you. But with alcohol, it's just the total opposite. And so I just find
by the way, when you dine out, because Tina and I, when we're going through this, we obviously do it together. And when you dine out without alcohol, it's so cheap.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, a $300 meal gets like $80 to $90.
Yeah. But it's also like you're sitting there and you kind of want something to drink with your food and there's 100%. Nothing, And I mean, the options have gone so much better now. But, back then I was like, God, there's nothing to drink. And you do feel a bit like a social outcast because you're sitting there with a water. And you're not going to order 3 Cokes or, 3 juices. And so, so we got into lockdown. I contacted, again, someone from my past. I'd known from my previous life that like beverage is the hardest category to win in.
Yes.
You're up against Coke and Pepsi and all these huge brands, and marketing and branding is the key because the liquids are easy. Right. Well, easier. Like almost anyone can make a liquid in a can.
Okay.
So a lot of it comes down to branding. And so I contacted an amazing guy, Nick Worthington. He was the creative chairman at Colenso for some time. He'd helped me a bit with Eat My Lunch. He wanted to kind of step out of that advertising world and again, same kind of mission. He just wants to work on really cool stuff that makes the world a bit better. And so I got in touch with him and said, Nick, I've got this idea. And he got together a bunch of guys and also ex-advertising. And, we kind of just, through Zoom calls and that first lockdown period worked through this. And then I reached out to a flavor house and got them to make some samples. And we was going, they were dropping it off at my door, no contact. And then, I would taste it and, give them feedback, or else I'll drop it off to maybe a friend and kind of have them taste it and, kind of do tastings that way. Yeah, and then one of the key things, a lot of the guys had worked on alcohol in their previous lives, and something with alcohol, there's this like mouthfeel and texture and depth that's really important. So like when you're making a rum or whiskey or something like that. And because we're making a pre-mixed cocktail, we were like, we have to make sure it doesn't taste just like a flavored sparkling water.
Right.
Because we had tried a few things and they all just tasted pretty bad. And so we went and found this ingredient, which we call Afterglow, but it's kind of like our little secret, herbs and spices. It basically gives you like a little burn at the back of your throat when you drink it, like a really good spirit cocktail does. And it mimics the warming sensation of drinking. So like the more you have of it, it actually warms you up.
Huh.
So like after 2 drinks, my cheeks get warm from drinking AF. And so you really feel like you've been drinking.
But without any of the negative consequences.
Yeah, it's just like a natural ingredient, a botanical. So that was our real kind of key when we kind of knew, actually we've got something that we all really love from a product point of view. Got the best brand people, and creative and designers across this. Yeah, and then it was just really convincing the retailers that people wanted this kind of stuff because there was nothing like it on the market at the time. And so we were very lucky we got into New World and we launched at the end of 2020.
Okay.
So this was kind of, at the same time Eat My Lunch was winding down.
Yes.
So I had the capacity to kind of then start really kind of throwing myself into AF and starting this new business.
Back to that timing piece, I love that as timing as well, because one of the complaints that we all had over COVID is that we were drinking way too much.
Yeah.
Because it was like, just waiting for 5 o'clock to roll around, and sometimes that'd be 3 o'clock, and then on the weekend that might be 1 o'clock. And so, in terms of nailing people that probably started to come aware to the fact that they were probably had too much of the negative things in their life, and now you get the positive things. New World, if I'm correct, is not a collective buying. You've got individual stores. Is that right? Okay, so did you kind of start with a local store and get a bit of a test case and then kind of build from there? How did those early motions work?
I was lucky that so Foodstuffs invested in Eat My Lunch.
Okay. Wow, cool.
So using those networks, so we did manage to get it ranged, and so there's like products that are core range that every store has to have.
Mm-hmm.
So probably like toilet paper and, and then there's other products that they get to decide whether they want to take it or not. So it's a little bit more centralized, but you can also go store to store and sell it. So it was a little bit more centralized, and I think we got into, oh gosh, I can't remember how many now, maybe 80 in the first instance. And
80
then,
stores?
Yeah.
Okay, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, and then built it from there. But, COVID was one of those interesting times too to start a business. It was good in the first few months of lockdown, like you kind of had nothing else to do. So this was kind of really great and to kind of throw ourselves into it. But then when it came to things like, getting bottles from China and shipping stuff, and like I just remembered like the first production, our bottles are sitting out on the water in the port.
Oh.
And there was such a backlog at the port.
Of everything.
It just was sitting there and we could see it, but it couldn't come in time.
Wow.
So there were some of those unique challenges at that time.
Yeah.
But we were, one of the first brands to launch. And so there was a lot of consumer education. And a lot of people still were like, what's the point of this? Like, why would you have a gin and tonic without alcohol? So it was really interesting, just kind of challenging, again, those mindsets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The early, you said it's a marketing play to win and lose in. What were some of the things that you did to give you good presence in a marketing? I think of brand activations as being a classic one, but of course we were in COVID, so we had, in and out of lockdown, and so people giving away product at the mall a little bit less, or, that sort of thing. But what were some of those early things that you did that set yourself up to succeed, both in a category that you're educating people, but also that there's other competitors coming through at the same time?
Yeah, so sampling, like, with food and beverage taste And with beverage, like taste is everything. And
Mm.
particularly in this category, because there were I'm sure you've had lots of non-alc beers. Those early ones,
Oh, they were gross.
terrible, right?
Yeah. Now they're great.
Yeah, and now like it's they taste really great. Wine, terrible.
Yes.
Still a long way to go.
Yeah. I think my personal sense with the wine is why bother? It's like, we've got the alcohol-free cocktails and alcohol-free beer, stripping the alcohol out of wine. Just have a grape juice or just, get around that problem with something different. Maybe we'll get there. We probably will, but you no doubt will have more insight than I do.
Yeah, the wine is so tough.
Yeah.
Because there is just so much more to wine, like the body and the tannins, and
Right.
those things are hard to replicate.
Yeah.
Whereas with flavors, so like we use a ton of flavors in our drinks.
Yes.
To try and get the complexity and the layers that you'd get in a great cocktail. But like a gin and tonic, you can replicate those floral notes, the coriander, the juniper, so
Yes.
those are a lot easier.
Yes.
And I think from a branding point of view, PR,
Right.
and it was hard coming into this second business once Eat My Lunch had closed, because I think maybe more internal pressure on myself of like, okay, second time, and now you do know more things. So you know where all the points of failure could be. And it's that pressure of like, I don't want to fail a second time. And I think that's something else, like now having moved to the States, you can really see that difference. In New Zealand, failures or closing of a business, it's like this huge failure. And people really focus on that versus the good or the impact or the successes that business had.
Yeah.
In the States, no one cares.
Right.
Like, this business went bankrupt, and it was an alcohol-free bottle shop. They were the first ones to launch. They launched in COVID. They expanded way too fast, but they had huge backing, raised shitloads of money, and then they went bankrupt. The guy who started it, he's like so wanted at the moment.
Wow.
Because
in a positive way.
In a positive way. People want him speaking about it. They so they don't see that as a failure. Like, instead they kind of go, well, he must have learned a ton from that.
Right.
So let's, he's an expert now.
Yes.
And I definitely didn't feel that with Eat My Lunch here, that, I was probably like hiding myself a little bit more and not really wanting to talk about it. I was really worried about what the press would say and the media in New Zealand and how we kind of, get that story out.
Yeah.
And even now when I do a couple of interviews here, people are like, oh, so, how do you feel about Eat My Lunch failing? And I'm like, well, it didn't fail. Like, the good that it did was incredible. But once a business closes, like, I think we forget about that and we focus on, things like how much money does this business owe the IRD and, all the problems that it had. So I think that pressure at the time of going into a second venture so quickly and kind of go, right, this cannot fail. Like, this has to be really successful and be successful as quickly as Eat My Lunch too. Like, I definitely felt that pressure of time. Yeah. I think a lot of PR, the branding was really great. We tried to do things differently. And really just getting people tasting it and talking about it.
Yeah. Had you always planned to go global from day one? Was that part of the business plan? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And so was it because you went NZ US? Yep. Great. Which, by the way, for a lot of folk feels like, wow, what an intimidating step from this tiny little 5 million market, which is smaller than LA or New York, kind of thing, and then jumping to the United States. But those of us that have endeavoured to do business in Australia, which we'll talk about in a second, have discovered that actually you're almost better to go to the States because there's so much more scale there and you haven't got this, kind of dirty cousin looking down your nose at you thing that the Australians can do with New Zealanders.
Yeah.
There's a joke, not funny, about the amount of businesses that are in the Tasman Sea that have endeavoured to go to Australia that have died along the way, or they've had to kill that venture because it is so difficult to do business in Australia. But let's talk about doing business in the States.
Yeah.
So how did you get that early first win, and what's it like working with Americans?
So we definitely looked at Australia as our next market.
Okay.
Like you say, most New Zealand businesses do. But when we looked at it, we're like, not many New Zealand brands have succeeded.
No.
So we were struggling to find, examples and people to talk to.
The playbook doesn't really exist. Yeah.
And the cost of business was high. We actually have had Woolworths in Australia range us twice, and we've turned them down because financially it just doesn't even make sense. It's so expensive. And because they're a duopoly, they can command whatever margins they want. And actually we met at the same time ex-Coca-Cola executive, and he said, no one cares about Australia and New Zealand. If you guys are thinking about exit values and things, you need to show that you can make it in the US, on either coast, or the UK.
Okay.
So, that was good advice. And so we're like, skip Australia. It's going to take the same amount of time and resource to launch in Australia as it is in California.
Yeah, wow. And that's an 80 million person market.
55.
55 million? Yeah. Wow.
Right? So, just the opportunity and the size of the market is huge there. And for us, actually, the UK, it was like, might be easier than the US, but time zone, it's a killer. And 2 flights, at least, with LA, it's 1 flight, better time zone. And I mean, those are very practical and small reasons, but they kind of like shaped, the decisions that we made. So we went over there, and, LA, it's like super trendy. You've got retailers like Erewhon, and they're picking up on things that we haven't even seen over here. So we thought, oh look, we're probably like really late to the market. We might be number 10 or something. But when we went there was nothing like AF over there.
Wow.
It was shocking. Yeah. And
this is 21, 22?
22.
22,
yeah.
Wow, okay. So you had a good foothold in New Zealand by now. You're probably into the 7 figures of revenue kind of thing.
Yeah. And we always knew New Zealand was, just from a market size limiting.
Yeah.
And so that's why, our model was always built around, we'd use third-party manufacturers, so we don't own any mega assets. We weren't about to go and build a plant or anything like that. So, and, transferable formulations, IP, and all of that stuff. So, we got to LA. We're like, God, we actually can't find anything like ours. We kind of shopped the product around a bit, had people taste it, got really great feedback. And then through Eat My Lunch, I'd also met a gentleman called Gary Hirschberg. He is an American. He founded Stonyfield Organic Yogurts in the US, sold that to like Danone some time ago. And he has been really active in helping New Zealand food and beverage businesses launch in the US, particularly in that kind of organic, better for you space. So he had come across Eat My Lunch, we'd been in touch, and he invested a little bit in Eat My Lunch as well. And so through him, we got some introductions, and the first retailer, so the supermarkets didn't have these kind of products or even sections for them. Like some of them had a few non-alc beers, and that was about it. So they were really behind, surprisingly.
Wow.
And so we got introduced to a retailer called Sprouts. They're kind of like a smaller version of Whole Foods. And they had decided that they were going to get into the space. They'd seen what was going on overseas. And so we were one of the first brands to launch with them in the States, like one of 2 brands that they launched with. And that was April 23. And
California West Coast markets?
Well, we said to them, hey, let's just do 50 stores as a trial, in LA or California, and see how that goes. And so that was the plan. And which everyone agreed was a very sensible plan for the US. And we got to, we found a manufacturer in Vegas. And I remember sitting there, we were doing our first production, and then I had a call with Sprouts. And the buyer was like, hey, we've decided that it's got to be all of our stores or nothing.
How many's all?
Like 420. And we were like, oh, shit, we've only made enough product for 50 stores.
Wow.
And so we were scrambling to try and get product made in time. It was like an April launch, so we had to have product by February. So we were making in December just for 50 stores, and then we're like, oh, holy crap, we've got to order more ingredients and packaging and everything. And even just trying to get a time on the line in the factory, the manufacturer, like we had to pay them $20,000 just to make it happen for us.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Just to squeeze us in. Yeah.
To give them more money, consequently, anyway. Yeah.
So we launched in April 23 in Sprouts in 400 odd stores. And that was across something like 18 states.
Mm-hmm. Early sales, how were they?
It was hard to know if it was good or not because there were no benchmarks. And so even the buyers didn't know what, a good rate of sale would look like or, what kind of success would be. And because we couldn't really benchmark it against, say, soft drinks. We couldn't really benchmark against alcohol. We were kind of in this new, really grey area. And, it went well enough that they kept expanding and, we had 4 SKUs, 4 different varieties on the shelf, and then it got to 7. So, we kept growing and helping to kind of bring awareness to the category and educate consumers. So a lot of the stuff we did in New Zealand, it was good to take those learnings to the US in terms of educating retailers and consumers about this category. So they liked that. That was cool. And then kind of like, I think October time, we got a call. Target had decided they were going to get into this space.
And they came to you.
Yeah, and they came to us, said, we'd want to include you guys in it. Do you want it to be part of it?
How many stores is Target?
So Target in total has 2,000 stores, but they picked just over 1,000 for this. Mm-hmm. So we're like, great. And then about maybe 4 weeks later, I went to meet Walmart and had to fly from New Zealand to Bentonville for 48 hours. They had this thing. It was like a dragon's den. So there were 3 buyers and you had 15 minutes to present and they would tell you on the spot whether you got in or not.
I love that bit.
Yeah. And so, flew over there, did the spiel and let them taste the products. And they gave me a golden ticket at the end, which I still have. And so we got ranged.
Like Willy Wonka chocolate factory, got a ticket.
And they made such a big deal. You know how Americans like to just make a big deal about stuff. And so everyone's like, applauding. It's like, and then
confetti cannons. Yeah.
Go and have an interview, have your photos taken.
Amazing.
And,
Cool.
You're walking around Walmart and if anyone saw you, they were like, oh, congrats, you got the gold. Like it was such a big thing. It was quite funny. And then so then we got Walmart. And then that was another 1,000 stores. And so that was huge. And Walmart, we had been told, they are slow movers. Everyone was like, don't even talk to them for another 2 years because they see what happens with the rest of the market and then they will decide whether they want to get into it or not. But they're not risk takers and they're not like leaders in new things. So it was quite a surprise to get Walmart. So, that was kind of end of 23 and we were launching with them at the beginning of 24. And our biggest challenge then was we needed to make all this product. And we had no money.
Because you're advancing hundreds of thousands of dollars here, I guess, in product, right, to stack the shelves.
It was over $1 million.
$1 million, wow.
Of product we had to make for, because, particularly at the beginning when you're kind of filling those stores, they take a lot more to fill the shelf.
Of course.
And so that, that was a good problem to have to raise money on the back of to fulfill orders. But you kind of realize actually getting more distribution costs you a lot more.
It's almost more like a technology business in that you've got to build all this product at the outset and then take it out into the world in the hope that it's going to sell, right? As opposed to a services company, which of course is completely different mechanics and metrics, but
Yeah, so that was, hugely exciting to get into those retailers. And so we launched with them in April 24. And yeah, it's kind of just grown since. So that was kind of, we went from 400 stores to 2,500 stores. We're now in about 4,200
Total
stores in
stores.
the
Wow.
US. So we just launched with Whole Foods and Kroger, which Kroger's the biggest kind of supermarket in the US. They've got over 2,000 stores. So yeah, we just launched with them a couple of months ago, and that's going really well. But the US, I mean, it's huge. So massive opportunities. There's something like over 40,000 supermarkets in the US.
Wow.
So we're not even scratching the surface of that. And yeah, just the size and the scale of the US. I had no idea. And when you listen to these numbers, 1,000 stores, that's more than what we have in New Zealand, but that's just half of Target.
It's crazy.
It's so crazy.
Our brains struggle to get around these really big numbers. It's like 1 billion. And I remember reading this in a way that was really consumable. And it was on the iPhone, which had just sold its billionth iPhone. Apple had just sold the billionth iPhone. And it was about 9 years into the business. And so the question was, how many iPhones do you have to sell every single day for 9 years to get to 1 billion?
Yeah.
Just a shade under 300,000.
Wow.
So imagine spending $1 billion. You've got to spend $300,000 every single day for 9 years to spend $1 billion. And so 40,000 stores, you say, and there's less than 1,000 in New Zealand. That's 50 times. It's more than 50 times bigger than New Zealand kind of scale. And you go in your head, well, that makes sense. But then you can't really play that out in terms of metrics and mathematics. It's really, really hard for humans to conceive of scale and size. It's like the whole universe, the scale of the universe. We cannot get our head around because we're just this tiny infinitesimal little dot down on the bottom of the world. How close are you exceeding your business plan expectations with the scale that you've been able to get to in the space of time, or are you around about running to plan, or did you kind of not have really detailed? You would have had some form of detailed mechanics. You've taken investment and etc. So, yeah.
I mean, it's so hard. Again, we're in this new space, and when I talk to people about our experience in the US, I always qualify it with, "Hey, this is so different. We're not just selling." Another peanut butter here or another, cleaning product or skincare. This category didn't exist in the US. And so, the conversations we're having with retailers, they're different because they're not going, well, prove to me why I should add you when I've already got 10 of them on shelf. So it's probably been in some ways a bit easier because retailers were looking for products like ours, and because of timing, we were, one of the first, and so we had a bit of at least success and record in the market and data points, whereas a lot of other brands that have just coming in, they're kind of starting fresh. So, yeah, I think for us, it's definitely been more challenging. The category is one of the fastest growing beverage categories, which also means huge amounts of competition.
Yes.
And as I said before, it's not hard to put liquid into a can. So everyone is doing it. And I talked to the Walmart buyer last year. He had been presented with 600 new product lines in our category.
600?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's kind of what you're up against, and you're presenting him with 3 or 2. And it's out of the 600, he's got to choose. And, they haven't got a huge space for it, but he's choosing 4 brands out of that.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Right. So the level of competition is just
intense.
You can't imagine. Yeah.
Plus super well funded in a lot of instances, I would imagine as well.
This category has actually been more smaller startups and things. And yeah, I think, for us, speed is essential because we can run super fast and sooner or later, one of the big guys is going to come in.
Of course.
With something
or buy
it. Yeah. And so, yeah, trying to stay ahead of the pack has kind of been our goal. And so while I would say the category probably hasn't grown, or our sales in terms of total expectations isn't as fast as what we thought it was going to be. There's definitely probably been slower consumer adoption in that space. And just the retailers are still learning, like half the time you have no idea where the stuff is, where they've put it. Like, they don't have signage, they haven't called it out. So it's been quite a slow process of learning with them and trying to kind of move them into the right direction.
Yes.
But I think for us, making sure that we are staying ahead, because we saw what happened with craft beer and, kombucha, like when it exploded.
Yeah.
God, I don't know how many brands and products were in there. And then, then it went through this phase of consolidation and people buying brands out. And so, we need to make sure like we're one of the top and that we're up there and surviving. Yeah.
Talked about timing before and trends, right space, right time. Absolutely. The Gen Alpha, Gen Zs that are the younger category, Gen Zs who are those of a drinking age now, their amount of consumption, I heard the other day, it's something like 30% less than the generation ahead of them, which is Gen Y, which is less than Gen X, which is mine, I think maybe yours as well, generation, but we were boozers. And so that was a different kind of group altogether, probably overconsumption in a lot of instances for people. And the rising awareness of alcohol as a poison and the movement for people to be sober curious, I think is the term that you use. Sober curious, which is great. So Jeremy Moon from Icebreaker sat in this chair and he was talking about how New Zealanders can sometimes go overseas and think that the clean, green New Zealand thing will work in our favour, whereas a lot of time people are like, where? Or who, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So has New Zealand played into your story at all? Have you just, no, we're just this category, the new thing, exciting, but you're not leading from New Zealand at all?
Yeah, so again, from the beginning, we always knew we wanted to go
global. Yeah.
Global, and so we built a brand that was global
and
that felt very global.
Yes.
So we didn't play on the New Zealand element at all. So the only, and we manufacture locally in the US and we source ingredients from there as well. The only thing we bring from New Zealand is the afterglow.
Right.
Because it's like
the secret sauce,
the trade secret.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but again, we don't, it's not because it's from New Zealand, but it's because it really gives you this kind of feeling that you're drinking.
Yes.
I think definitely in the last couple of years, the awareness of New Zealand has gone up. Like whenever we talk to an American, they're like, oh, New Zealand's on my bucket list. I love it.
If you're a founder, then an exit is on your horizon somewhere, either by default or by design. I'd encourage you it should be much more the latter. Why not head to my website and do my exit audit? It'll take 2 minutes and it will highlight for you the things that will maximize your valuation or indeed those that could cost you millions of dollars. joshcomrie.com, it'll be the first thing that'll pop up. Could be the best 2 minutes that you spend this year.
But yeah, definitely, I don't think it's as strong as what we think it would be. The way that I've used it, though, is more with buyers. So over the last couple of years, like to get a meeting with them in person, I'd be like, hey, I'm coming from New Zealand. Let's meet on this date. And so that's worked to our advantage quite a bit.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm making this trip all this way to see you especially.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people treat that with some respect.
Yeah. Because they do get, hundreds and
400.
hundreds of calls and people wanting to meet. And so yeah, playing that card. And, one thing too is like I just remember being told by a couple of Americans, oh, Lisa, you've got to speak louder and you've got to be more confident and, in people's face and really sell yourself, versus the kind of more quiet, humble, understated Kiwi
And
attitude.
Have you done that?
No.
Okay. What about the accent piece? So when I called you to have this pre-conversation, I picked up a quick twang, like an American twang at the start. And I lived in the UK back in the 1990s, and I remember coming back to New Zealand maybe a year or so into my stay there, and people saying to me, you sound like a Brit. And because of the environment I was working in, I was in a sales-oriented environment at the start, and I actually had to enunciate my words in a different way, and my elocution became quite British intentionally, but then you just end up speaking like that all the time. But for you, you've maintained your Kiwiness and you're quite happy with that?
Yeah, I think more around, there's certain words like sometimes now I catch myself, I'm like, is it data or data?
Right.
Like, I don't know which one I'm saying,
Yeah.
if it's American or not, you
Yes,
know.
it's both.
Yeah. But I think genuinely I just can't be, you know, all loud and like full of, you know, pump and like, you know, confidence and selling myself in that way. It's just not me.
Inauthentic. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I have used it to my advantage. And I think the buyers actually appreciate that because you stand out. You are different from every other founder that they meet who is American and who's all like, oh, we're amazing. You know, and I think that has earned a lot more respect and ease of communication with the buyers. And you know, sometimes like I'll play up to it a bit and like time difference and, you know, this is how we do things in New Zealand. So yeah, I've kind of used that more as the advantage rather than from a product and consumer point of view.
Yes. Culturally, so there's an accent difference, there's a scale difference, but culturally doing business with Americans can be quite different. What's your experience around that?
Yeah, I think just they are so confident. And they're such good salespeople. My God, they can sell anything, you know, and you talk to them and you're like, wow, they're amazing.
Sounds incredible.
Yeah, like, you know, they really know what they're talking about and they've done all of this. And I think, you know, being Kiwis, we take everything at face value. Like, we're like, yeah, they must know what they're doing.
Yeah, they said it, so it must be true.
Yeah, and this is what they're going to do. And, you know, they charge you an arm and a leg for it too. And so, yeah, we've just made that mistake so many times, kind of going, oh, that sounds great, cool, we're going to bring them on. And then, you know, I'd say 9 times out of 10, they haven't delivered. It
hasn't worked out the way you hoped. Wow.
And so we've just moved through multiple partners. It's definitely been one of the most challenging things in the US is finding a really good partner that will deliver on what they say. And so, like, we've had, you know, we're on our 4th Amazon agency, our 3rd like logistics provider. You know, it's just been so hard finding the right people. And I think a bit shocking too, because in New Zealand we are so small. If you don't do what you say you're going to do,
people find out pretty quickly.
Yeah. You know, I would never think about doing that because, yeah, your reputation's online. But over there, they don't care because they've got so many more customers lining up, such a huge market. So,
it's a really interesting tension that exists there for me because in the United States, they're famously litigious, right? They're very, very quick to sue. And in New Zealand, we are the total opposite. So the irony of that situation is that in New Zealand, we will tend to do what we say that we're going to do, whereas in the States, they don't always.
Funny.
And yet they're more likely to get sued. You'd think it'd be the other way around, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting bit of tension. I lived and worked in Australia and found what you found in the States with Australians. And I think that's a misunderstanding for Kiwis is that we think that Australia is just going to be a big version of New Zealand, whereas it's much more like the United States in that there's it's a lot harder, faster, and people will say that they can do things if they haven't done them before because they want to do them or they really want to get the order and then they'll prove to you that they're really good people along the way.
Yeah.
Whereas in New Zealand, we tend to undersell ourselves and consequently in like an interview environment or in a sales environment, we can end up short selling ourselves, especially if we're across the table from someone who's accustomed to being oversold to. So consequently, what people do is that if you're always getting oversold to, you believe a third or a half of what people are telling you.
Yeah.
Kiwis turn up just telling the truth. And so, but then the buyer will believe a half or a third of what you're saying. And so it kind of works against you. So what would be your piece of advice to someone who was just starting or wanting to get themselves started and they had to get partnerships going in the United States? What would be a thing that you wish that you'd heard that someone could pick up from this conversation?
Yeah, I think definitely doing a lot more DD, you know, because I don't, particularly with partners, and, you know, we wanted to run really fast and, you know, we had these timelines that we had to meet. And so, you know, probably the DD process wasn't as thorough. And also you don't know people there, so you don't have the networks to fall back on. But yeah, definitely, you know, getting, you know, word of mouth recommendations and firsthand recommendations from people, that's probably where we've found the most success.
Got it.
But again, when you're entering a market and you know no one, that's really difficult.
It's tough, right?
Yeah. And for us, there wasn't another New Zealand company that
Like
had,
you guys.
that were like us and, were making beverages over there or had made it big into, the retail spaces. So there wasn't a lot to lean on.
If you're doing B2B SaaS, which we're actually phenomenally good at from New Zealand now, that's a pretty well-trodden path, be it in the United States or Australia or Singapore even as well. So you can find networks and people that have gone through that path before. I have a friend, I've invested in their company. They have a B2C application, a piece of software. And we don't really have any success stories out of New Zealand. And a consumer product like what you're doing, especially in the F&B space, there's not a lot of kind of foreground before that. Maybe the only exception might be, the Fonterra kind of products that have done well in certain markets, but they're such a different beast with such different pockets and reach, and they're also in a different category as well, right? So,
so it was really hard kind of trying to get that advice.
Yeah.
And so, when we talk to other organizations, they're like, oh, well, we can help you with this. We're like, we've actually already figured it out now ourselves because we've just had to at the pace that we wanted to move at.
Yeah. So Lisa King, we've had a great wide-ranging conversation, and there's a question that I always ask people around an alternate universe mental model, imagination question. So there's another Lisa King. She's living in a different universe, and she hasn't gone down the space of a successful corporate marketing career, then moved into the F&B space as an entrepreneur. But she's deeply satisfied by that career. What is that career?
Do you know what my dream job is? Is to be a Michelin star inspector.
Oh, what a great job and answer. Because you get to go to the restaurants, eat all the food.
And review it and
I love that
it would
answer.
Honestly, that would be my dream. I think I love food. So it kind of made sense that I was always kind of in and around it.
Yes.
When my parents came to New Zealand, I was about 2, they did the typical thing. They opened a Chinese restaurant.
Right.
So, although neither of them were cooks. Actually, my mum was a terrible cook. But my dad did the cooking and I worked in there in the weekends and things. So, I think food's just always been such a core part of my life. And I love going to restaurants. And, I've eaten at some of the best ones around the world. Yeah, so this dream of being a Michelin star inspector, I was like, I would die to do a job like that.
What a great answer.
Yeah, and I love reviewing things and being kind of brutally honest because I don't, I've read a lot of reviews about places and half the time you're like, it's not even how the place was.
Right.
You're
clearly like nepotism or you've been paid to do it or something. So,
I've always thought about, I could start a review blog that was just brutally honest.
That would probably get some followership in this world. Good friend of Tina and I's, Jo Hunkin, she was the editor of Gourmet Traveller in Sydney when we were living in Sydney.
Yeah.
And so they would do for meals, which would be invited to the latest restaurant or to the new menu, whatever it would be. And we went along with them on a couple of occasions.
Yeah.
And it was the closest that I've gotten to the reviewing experience. You walk into the restaurant, you are treated like absolute royalty.
Honestly, my biggest thrill, one of the highlights of, the last 2 businesses they've had was Michael Meredith telling me I had good taste buds.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, okay.
Is that going to go on your tombstone?
Yes.
Lisa King, she has good taste buds. Michael Meredith. I love it. Lisa, what a wonderful conversation. I'm so grateful that you've taken the time to come into the studio and share your story with the audience, especially given that you now live in Miami. And this was a whistle-stop tour back to New Zealand. And I can't wait to keep following your success with AF Drinks internationally. Go well.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks so much for listening to the show. If you've gotten this far, I reckon you've probably enjoyed it. And there's more available for you in the form of my book, 2 Commas. It's available on my website, joshcomrie.com. I've done an Audible version, which is on amazon.com, and there's a Kindle one kicking around on either of those resources as well. I've had some wonderful, unsolicited feedback from early readers. They describe it as being punchy, clear, helpful, and actionable. What it's not is a guide on how to sell your company. You can go to ChatGPT for that. It's more insightful, experiential-based, and a bit of a blend of psychology, philosophy, and what it takes to build something meaningful and what all that means afterwards. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you grab yourself a copy.